Becky, thank you so much for joining me today to talk a little bit about your chapter in the book, Life Repurposed, but also about the other things about your life.
It's my pleasure to be here, Michelle.
So we're going to get into some of the heart of your story in a minute, but let's start out a little bit lighter. I want to know where your favorite places to go on vacation.
Oh gosh, there's so many places. I have been able to travel quite a bit in my younger years before children. So I loved going to like Greece and Turkey on a cruise, actually, where we learned about the life of Paul.
Oh,
And then
wow.
saw many of the places he had been on his travels. But more recently, we're doing a lot of camping with our kids. They're 8 and 12, and we're going to try the Boundary Waters, which if some of the listeners aren't familiar, it's basically a backpack canoe, bring everything you need, dry your
No
food.
electricity, no flush toilets.
Exactly. Roughing it.
Yeah. So you're a dedicated camper if you're doing the Boundary Waters, because I choose state parks that have, flush toilets, and I don't even like the porta potty bathrooms.
Yes. I wouldn't want to do it for like a month, but a week is good.
Yeah. I love that there's some similarities in our stories in that I went into a science-related field as well because that's what seemed logical, even though I always liked writing. So I went into nursing because I was good at science and people told me to go to school for that. It's like later I discovered I really liked writing. So what was your science career?
I'm a chemist. I still say that I am, even though I haven't worked in the field since 2013.
I still say I'm a nurse too, yeah.
Because I did all the training and the work, and I worked for quite a while in the field. Still understand most of it and remember a lot of what I did. And I loved science and math in school. So I tend to get bored. So that I've, changed. Like I was a college professor, and then I went and worked in a lab and supervised other chemists just for the variety of it and change and mixing things up.
I love that you submitted your story and that it's in the book because, like you said, your life has had some surprises and some twists and turns, and you give a little glimpse of that in the book where you talk about how you met your husband and God's timing in that. So can you give us a nutshell of what that was like waiting to meet the right person?
Sure. So I did not meet my husband until I was 38. And, I'd spent kind of like a lot of single people time doing online dating, having married friends who would set me up with people they knew, joining singles groups at church, just the kinds of things that you think, oh, this may lead somewhere. And really, most of it led nowhere. And I finally got to the point where I had kind of mentally given up because I was getting so old, I thought. And I just found ways to be content with my life as it was. But I still did have that longing inside. So I had started doing some volunteer grant writing for an organization that operates in Kenya, and planned to go on a trip there with some people from my church. And that got canceled due to political upheaval that was happening there. And it was not safe to go. I really wanted to go, but it wasn't safe. So then that was one of those crossroads where I was like, I really thought I was supposed to be doing this. It's something good. It allows me to do something I really believe in protecting your creation, Lord. So why is this happening? And it was only like 2 months later when a friend set me up on a blind date. And that is when I met my husband. So God had other plans for me. I just had no idea what they were because I am so focused on what I think the next steps are and kind of having my goals and agenda, wanting to be in control. So all those themes of my personality are strong. So I've had to really learn how to look for and leave space for God to work and to send me signals in different ways.
What are some things that you strategically do that help you to set aside your own plans?
That's a great question. I think my favorite part of the achiever description is that you feel like you need to be productive even when you're on vacation.
Yes, I can relate.
Which, me too. So a lot of times I just have to um, be conscious of thinking about that and thinking, okay, you're on vacation. This is the time just to enjoy, your children's fascination with finding shells on the beach or whatever is going on that day. So that's part of it. And I think
Mhm,
prayer also helps to just kind of release some of your own um, predisposed kind of goals and um, ideas about what should be happening and just try to let go and surrender them to
mhm.
God.
So when I look at the type of vacation you chose, it makes perfect sense. You chose the Boundary Waters. My husband and I have discovered too that going hiking and doing some outdoorsy kind of things is helpful. First, he loves it, so he thrives on it. I'm not that outdoorsy, but it's a way of me forcing myself to unplug. There
Hmm.
is no TV. I cannot get Wi-Fi. And so
Uh-huh.
I have to be present in the moment.
Yes. Yeah, there's so many distractions in our lives right now
Mhm.
that getting away from them just gives you a whole new way of being.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So what challenge in your life has caused you to learn how to trust God more deeply?
It would have to be our two adoption processes.
Mm,
We adopted internationally from Liberia, Africa, both times. And I noticed that it was much different the second time around
mm,
because I had learned the first time that so many things were going to be out of my control and there was nothing I could do. I mean, no amount of hard work, no amount of phone calls or anything was going to make any difference whatsoever. I just needed to wait and trust that God was going to work out, the snafu happening across the ocean that was
mm.
causing everything to be bottled up for like 3 or 4 months
Wow.
on hold. Just trust that he was going to work. And then it was really so encouraging and faith building to see how he worked
Mm,
and cleared the log jams that had come up. So the second time was much easier. Um, and I think that that's the way it is with a lot of us, right? We have these experiences that help us learn to trust God more and more with
yeah.
whatever's happening in our lives.
That's sort of the idea of life repurposed too, in that, life's not going to be perfect. So it sounds like you haven't had a perfect life.
Right.
Nobody I've interviewed yet has. So for all of us, we have different struggles, and God shows up in the midst of those struggles. When have you felt the most alone?
Um, it would have to be during my single days
Mhm,
when I just wasn't sure what I was supposed to be doing. I mean, I had gone to school for so many years and I had this career, but I was, spending so much time at work and it just felt like, why am I doing this? I mean, it was a perfectly fine job, but it just didn't feel like it was really resonating with my soul and what I was made to do. And it certainly wasn't directly serving God in any way.
mhm,
um, so it was just some time of kind of wandering through all of that and just kind of hanging with, being um, present in the life of the church and getting to know people and stay in my Bible and in Bible study and
mhm,
allowing some of that to speak too, because you have these wonderful stories, right, of Joseph and Moses, where
mhm.
whatever struggle they're in has gone on for like 30 years. And it's like, oh my goodness, I was nowhere near, the 30-year mark in any of my wanderings. So yeah, I think just being in that community, I guess, was
Mhm.
really helpful to me.
So, as you did then become a mother, were there some challenges that you had after your adoption?
Yeah, I think still have.
Yeah.
But both of our girls were older. One was 5 and one was 6 when we adopted. So they very much remember where they came
Mm,
from. They very much remember their birth mothers.
mm,
And it's a beautiful thing in a lot of ways. But it also causes them some serious grief. So
yeah.
we really have had to walk with them through that and They're both very resilient and doing great. But it is a whole different perspective on things and loss and some of those things that we don't often think about when we're just,
Yeah.
um, operating in daily life, I guess.
So for the mom out there who's waiting, or for the woman out there who's waiting because she's waiting for the right man to come along, or she's waiting to have a child, what's the heart of your message to those women?
I think, a part of it's just simple, just hang in there because we can't see the future. It would be great if we could, and
Mm.
we don't know what's right around the corner. When our adoption was stuck, I was raking in our yard and I just remember so vividly how I was just so irritated, even with God, because it's like, why is this taking so long? We were just waiting for something to clear so we could travel.
Mhm.
And within like 4 days, we had bought plane tickets. So
Wow.
you never know what's right around the corner. And, surround yourself with good friends who can encourage you, who can direct you back to God's messages of hope and trusting in Him. And then think about the ways He's worked in your life before.
Mm.
Remind yourself of those because, as you rack them up, they'll have great encouragement to give.
Yeah. Your chapter in the Life Repurposed book is about how sometimes God delays things and yet it's not denied. And so that's the heart of what you just said there of like it may be a delay, it may not be a no yet, but it could be a delay. So as you're looking through the book and starting to read some of the other chapters, are there any that have really stood out for you?
Yeah, I was just last night reading about the woman, her name's Maureen, who was in a motorcycle gang. Her mother had abandoned her and her family,
Mhm.
and just really sad time for her. And she just basically rebelled by joining this motorcycle
Mhm.
gang and trying to find love and acceptance through
Yeah.
that. And that is just a powerful story of how all of that transpired and how she became a Christian and then found all of her hope and love that she was craving in a
Mhm.
relationship with Jesus.
Yeah. So the purpose of a book like this where we tell everybody's stories is that we want to encourage people through story, just like you mentioned at the beginning of this episode, that your story can encourage someone else. And so as we read someone else's journey, it's sort of like when you read the Bible stories, we're encouraged by what we see God do there. When we read other stories of people that are living in our current days, we also see God's faithfulness there. So as we wrap up today, where do you see God's faithfulness and His hand in what you're going through right now, like in 2021 as we're recording this?
Yeah, it's interesting you asked that because my daughter just had surgery last Wednesday.
Mm.
She had her left foot reconstructed. And back in mid-January, the surgeon who had been following her for a few years said, "Okay, it's time. We're getting close to surgery." And I didn't expect that it was going to be this soon, so I immediately, my mind started cranking. And I'm like, "We're already doing school at home. If she has it soon, she won't have to miss school. And if she has it soon, she won't have to be, in a cast in the summer."
Mhm.
And so I just made it my mission to figure out how we could do this as soon as possible. Well, as soon as I got in touch with the scheduler, she said the first opportunities are June 2nd. And I was like, seriously? But the surgeon was able to find an opening. Um, and that opening didn't end up materializing due to timing of insurance
Mm.
authorizing. But then there was another open. So we thought it was all done. We were like, oh, we're going to wait for weeks now. But then another opening came up just spur of the moment. And it was exactly the week that I had thought would be the best week to do it because it was right before spring break. So I think God works in mysterious ways. Who knows what was going on behind the
Mhm.
scenes? Um, but I guess it comes back to just hang in there because
Mhm.
He's got this plan and I don't often understand it as I'm living it. But then when I look back, oftentimes I can see how His timing really was perfect and better than what I had planned in my head.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing your story with me today and for all of
Yes,
our
thank you.
listeners.
Oh, it's been wonderful to chat with you, Michelle.